Now is the time to establish policy in this vital area, beginning with public oversight of geoengineering. Now, House Bill 6011 is an important step to ensure that no one engages in climate engineering within the state of Rhode Island without the express approval of state officials, and only after careful review by state agencies with the expertise to assess risks and the efficacy of these proposals, with input from the public. Now, we support 6011 for the following reasons. First and foremost, Bill 6011 is necessary to protect human health and safeguard the environment. The 1991 patent, now owned by Raytheon, proposed seeding the atmosphere with metallic particles such as aluminum oxide. Now, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, exposure to high levels of aluminum can result in respiratory and neurological problems, possibly including Alzheimer's disease. Geoengineering methods also propose seeding the atmosphere with sulfate aerosols, sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, exposure to sulfur dioxide affects the lungs, and at high levels may result in burning of the nose, throat, breathing difficulties, and severe airway obstructions. Exposure to hydrogen sulfide is the worst. Again, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, a few breaths of air containing high levels of hydrogen sulfide can cause death. Lower, longer-term exposure can cause eye irritation, headache, and fatigue. Geoengineering poses serious risks for the environment as well. Geoengineering techniques may alter precipitation patterns, produce droughts, increase acid rainfall. Aerosol particles sprayed into the atmosphere could accelerate ozone depletion or reduce the total sunlight that reaches the Earth's surface, impact agricultural production, or reduce solar power production. Sulfate injection into the atmosphere can increase acid deposition in the ocean, possibly beyond biological thresholds. Geoengineering may pose unknown stresses on ecosystems and biodiversity. Now, some of these proposed techniques are not easily reversible if the effects are not what were intended. As Newton said, what goes up must come down. Any particulates in the air will eventually fall to the ground, on our homes, our businesses, the land, the water, our persons. Farmland covers about 10% of this state. Aquaculture is an important part of the state economy. We are not aware of anyone that has considered, much less studied, the impact of geoengineering on the ocean state's oyster harvest, for example. The economic impact of geoengineering experiments gone awry is completely unknown. The consequences of deliberately manipulating the climate and the environment are not completely understood. More research and experimentation is underway, and absent legislation or some form of public oversight to monitor and control experimentation, private actors may be free to engage in reckless behavior in the name of science or financial gain. And I'll give you an example. In 2012, an American citizen conducted a geoengineering experiment in ocean fertilization off the west coast of Canada by dumping 100 tons of iron sulfate into the Pacific Ocean in an effort to trigger a plankton boom and promote salmon restoration. Now, state laws should prohibit this type of activity without authorization, but current laws do not necessarily prevent these activities. It's not clear that geoengineering is prohibited, even regulated by existing federal and state environmental laws. House Bill 611 will guard against careless experimentation and deployment of any such activity and its concomitant risks. House Bill 6011 proposes a sensible method for tracking and assessing the danger and efficacy of any geoengineering activity in the state and for monitoring that activity and its impacts. In that regard, House Bill 6011 is entirely consistent with this state's environmental policies. And this state has vowed to protect air, water, land, and natural resources located within the state from pollution, impairment, and destruction. House Bill 6011 upholds this state's commitment to those policies. Additionally, Bill 6011 is a modest bill. It only requires that anyone proposing to deploy geoengineering technology in the state apply for a license.
Okay, here's one. It's flying so high right now, you can't hardly see the And we got some wind here too, a lot of wind. It's flying so high you can't see the jet. You can barely see the jet. You can barely see that jet spraying. All you see is the sprays. It could be a stealth-coated jet. Yeah, you can hardly see that jet. You can't even. Yeah, so it's going to be some sort of stealth technology on that jet. So all you see is the plume. All you see is the toxic geoengineering sprays, the weather modification, the marine cloud whitening, the solar radiation management plume, which is basically strontium, aluminum, barium. Okay, so these jets are now flying, and then this one just shut off. It has shut off. It seems it is shut off. So, let's see if we can catch it here somewhere. Yeah, no, it's just completely shut off right now. It will probably turn back on here in a minute. But yeah, that's stealth technology. Now they're doing this kind of intermittent, so you can't follow the trail, so you don't know. You can't follow it very well on flight tracker. You don't know which way it's going, which way it's coming from. Okay, here's another one right here. Now this one, that one is basically the typical jet you see spraying the nanoparticulates that are of course toxic, and they do this without environmental impact reports or public consent. So it's all done without public consent. And the reason why is they consider it a national security issue. And so this national security issue is not supposed to be talked about. And then this one here, it never turned back on. That one there never turned back on. So they're dotting the sky with these things. This one here, it could have turned on right there, right about there, because I don't see any other trail to it. And so, yeah, that one could have started. So they're probably doing more dotting on remote locations rather than full sprays.